Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our program spotlights people in our community who are involved in activities designed to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. My guest today is Tom Gay, the Director of Communications for the Severn River Association. Tom, welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Good to meet you all.
Okay. Well, the Severn River Association has had a rich history dating back to 1911. How has the organization's concerns and interests changed over the years?
You got 3 days to explain that one?
We've got a half an hour and
We started
we've got a lot of time.
Yeah, we started as a conservation group originally with the original settlers in the area here in 1911. And always the river was an important focus. At one time it was all about trying to promote fishing and recreation. And the goals of the association have evolved just as the communities have evolved. Our goals today are trying to protect and enhance the Severn River, try to improve water quality, and also to get people on the water to enjoy it. So it's part environmental restoration and protection, and there's some serious issues that we have to deal with on that. But we also want to celebrate, hey, we're a river community. We have a lot of communities on the river. Most of them are a part of our organization. And we're trying to create more and more of a sense of community on the river. Okay. So we're looking for ways to make the water cleaner and bring the fish back, bring the crabs back. Got to be optimistic.
Okay. The Severn River Association has a lengthy list of projects. And I'm going to throw out a phrase and let you respond to each one in terms of what the Severn River Association is actually doing in that area. Let's start it off with oysters.
Oh, glad you asked about that one. Yeah, oysters. It's one of our big projects. We are part of the statewide organization known as Maryland Grows Oysters. And we got organized under one of our former presidents, Bob Whitcomb, and he really got this thing going. We have now assembled the largest single oyster growing program in the state of Maryland on the river. We have over 450 voluntary oyster growers up and down the entire watershed. So that starts down here at the mouth and goes all the way up past Round Bay. And we have an oyster reef right south of the Route 50 bridge. And so our goal is to get as many oyster growers as we can. They grow the oyster spat over the winter. They hang it off piers, community piers, they're private piers. And then every year, the first Saturday of June, we collect all of those year-old oysters and we plant them on our oyster reef. So over the last 8 years, we've started to build up an oyster reef, and our goal is to create a critical mass of oysters. We need one giant pile of oysters so that when the conditions are ripe, and it doesn't happen all that often, but when they are ripe, we'll have millions of oysters on this bar and they'll finally reproduce. Now, historically, the Severn River is not a good river for reproduction of oysters. However, the oysters do live and thrive in the Severn River. And all this is thanks to Bob. Hi, Bob. He's really the brains behind all this. And so every year we have different people who come and check on our oysters. They are growing. They get bigger in size. And at one point, we're going to be able to have a measurable impact where we can say water quality is definitely improving because each individual oyster filters how many gallons of oyster a day? You all know? 50 gallons a day, one oyster. So we want millions.
50 gallons.
Yeah,
Wow.
50. And right now there's a teeny amount of filtering going on by all the oysters in the bay. We're that far down. But the goal is to at least bring it back to where we can have an impact where they can actually filter and clean the water. And we're not the only ones on the Severn River with oyster reefs. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation has their own program right on the other side of our river, right where we are. And so basically, if you look between the two bridges, that's where the oyster reefs are being replenished. And every year you'll see people dumping oysters on there. So thanks for asking about that one.
Well, the next one is stormwater.
Oh my God. The 2 points are related because stormwater is the #1 problem in the Severn River. People who aren't aware, stormwater runs off the bridges, it runs off your roofs, it runs off your gardens, it runs off the lawn, it runs off roadways, parking lots. All that runoff runs into the Severn River. And that's bad because with the runoff, it brings silt and clay and all that muddy plume that you see after storms. That is dirt that then settles in the bottom of the river, and here's the connection. It buries our oysters. And not only that, it also clouds up the water. And when you have cloudy water and muddy water, it blocks the light so the underwater grasses can't grow. So we're losing underwater grasses. We've lost the oysters years ago. One of the reasons we're taking the oyster bar and building it up is so that it won't be buried by the stormwater runoff, the sediment that's coming in. The stormwater also carries with it nitrogen pollution, which comes from air deposition, auto exhaust, jets coming over there, coal-fired power plants out in West Virginia are all settling all over our area all the time. That runs off with the stormwater, and then you get this overabundance of too much of a good thing, nutrients. You think nutrients are good, but actually in the river you don't want too much nutrient. So, stormwater, really, really bad. I have a solution for you.
Okay.
The Severn River Association, we have a program to help local communities can get a control over their own stormwater problems. And we offer stormwater grants. Ann Jackson is one of our members, and she organizes this program. We offer to communities $1,000 grants to help them pay for the design work that they need if they want to build a rain garden or a bioremediation area somewhere where they want to collect the stormwater. And the idea is to collect stormwater at the top of the hill, keep it on your ground, and let it seep through the ground naturally. You don't want to pipe the stormwater straight into the river. That's horrible. They did that in the 50s and 60s and the 70s. Everybody thought, all you have to do is get rid of water. Well, as it turns out, there's so many people here, all that water is now collecting in the river and making it a hard. So what happens is you get stormwater, you get a mud and silt, and then you're also getting nitrogen, and the nitrogen gets in the water, mixes with the overabundance of phosphorus, which is another problem we have. And then in the summer, the water heats up, we get these algae blooms that further enhances or further clouds the water, makes it harder for the grass to grow and the crabs and everybody else. And then there's another problem all associated with this. The algae, the effect there is that they bloom on the top, and you see this stuff on the top of the water. And then when they die, their little bodies and what's left of them sink to the bottom of the river, and through a complicated series of chemical reactions, biological reactions that I cannot explain, the result is we have low levels of oxygen in the river. So what happens is the fish can't breathe, basically. And so years ago, the fish had this much room in the water column to live and swim. And now when we have these episodes of low oxygen, the fish all have to crowd into this little narrow space. And then ultimately the fish go, hey, I can't breathe at all, I'm leaving. And the crabs walk away, the fish swim away, but clams, the oysters, they can't leave. So you have this devastated area at the bottom of the river. All this is related to stormwater, the nutrient pollution, the mud, and the silt that's coming in. So
is this all related to something which you have called Operation Clearwater? Or is that something different?
That's a separate operation.
What is that about?
Operation Clearwater is another annual event every spring. We are one of many organizations that participate in Operation Clearwater. In our case, we organize volunteers to clean up old trash dumps. Right. Now we've changed that program to planting trees every year. And the idea is if you plant a tree, the tree absorbs that rainwater, the stormwater that I'm mentioning was so horrible. The trees absorb that. So the trees are a natural cleansing action. It does take time for the tree to get to maturity, but the idea is plant more trees. More trees are good. So of course, when you're mowing all the trees down for a development, that ain't very good. That's not great at all. And that's a whole nother issue, but we do participate in Operation Clearwater. I'm sorry, I'm confusing them. Operation Clearwaters is that's water quality monitoring around some of our beaches, and we do participate in that. The cleanup and the tree planting is Clean Stream, and Operation Clean Stream, which is the annual event that we do in April.
Okay.
And some years we get a lot of MIDs come out and provide some muscle to do a lot of work, and we get a lot of other community organizers from all around the watershed to help us out with that. Sorry to confuse the two. For years, Dr. Sally Horner has been running the monitoring program for us, and she's recently handed that over. I forget the woman's name, but she is somebody who works at the AACC, Anne Arundel Community College, and they're running that, and they have some interns and students who will then go out and do water quality monitoring at select beaches.
What relationship does this all have to do with Headwaters?
Well, the Headwaters is another project that we have.
Well, it's the Severn River, so you're going to be involved with water.
All right, the Severn River Headwaters, historically, were great. They had a trout stream up there, and they had yellow perch reproduction, all in the header. These are the creeks. Right now, what you would think of the Headwaters, this is a giant area that was devastated when they put in Route 97 and Route 32. And we're part of a coalition of organizations who are trying to force the state highway administration to repair the damages that they've been causing since, when was 97 put in the 80s? That roadway created gigantic problems in the Severn water headways. Today, miraculously, part of the Jabez stream still is habitat spawning area for trout. We would like to protect that area and expand it, so we're trying to force the state to hurry up and repair the damage. And what happened, the problem with the Headwaters is when they put in 97, for one, all that development created tons of mud and stormwater pollution. And where did all that go? Well, they basically buried the floodplains of the Severn water headwaters up there. And one of our members, Mike Robinson, took me on a tour when I was first learning about this. It was absolutely astounding. We called it the Binfield blowout at one time, because there was this one tract of land where you go off 97 and the entire hill has disappeared. And there's the fence 12 feet above your head, and it's all because of the highway just washed all that sand and dirt into the floodplain, buried it all, and it killed the area. So we're trying to get that area restored. And we're one of several organizations up there. The good news, in early 2016, so you guys can remember this when you're checking this, when you put this on repeat in 2020. In 2016, the state has said, all right, there's a section of the Jabez, and we're going to invest $20 million on about 7 or 8 different projects on this one section to try to repair the damage. Longer term, wouldn't it be great if we could have the yellow perch spawning again in those headwaters? So you can go on the DNR websites, and they have stories and pictures during the 60s. The spring time was a gigantic fisherman's paradise up there, and people would drive up to the headwaters of the Severn River headwater streams, and they would go fishing for yellow perch. It was a gold mine up there. It was great. But then when they put in 97, that killed all of that. It's all gone. The yellow perch are still in the river. They come in from other areas, but they don't reproduce in the Severn River. They are reproducing barely in the Magothy River, but not in the Severn River.
Well, we're going to take a break now, and when we return, I'll be talking with Tom Gay about some additional aspects to the projects of the Severn River Association. I'm talking today with Tom Gay, who is the Director of Communications with the Severn River Association. And we are talking specifically about the projects in which this very old organization, dating back to 1911, is involved. Let me throw out one, Tom, that I am sure that most of your viewers don't know anything about. And that's, how about frog mites?
Farm mites.
Farg mites.
Oh, Phragmites?
Phragmites, that's how they pronounce it. Well, how about that?
Well, that's what I call it. You know, it's like we say paca, and the Baltimore people call it paca. I mean, you know. And I come from Washington, D.C.
What are they?
All right, Phragmites.
How do they impact the river?
All right, this is not my strong suit. But Phragmites are an invasive species. They look a lot like pussy whistles. They're tall and they have this little bunch at the top. And you look at them, oh wow, it's this beautiful field of these beautiful reedy things sticking out of the water. The problem is they can come into a wetland and their root systems are so involved that they can actually lead to the destruction of that wetland. So removing Phragmites is a very important problem, a very important project. The problem with it is that Phragmites is incredibly hard to remove. It's like worse than bamboo. And everybody knows how much they love bamboo. When your neighbor puts in a bamboo patch and how everybody else is so happy, 20 years later. Phragmites is even worse, getting rid of it. I was talking with John Page Williams, who's with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and he was explaining that one of the only ways to do it now, you have to come in with basically earth-moving equipment and dig out the whole pile of Phragmites to really remove it. But there are other ways, and they involve chemicals, which is a horrible thing to want to do right on the water and using chemicals. So it's a problem. You can go in there every year and mow it down manually, but they just grow back. So that's why you have to bring in this, the latest thinking anyway, is bringing in this giant earth-moving equipment and pull it out.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about some other things that the Severn River Association is directly involved in. I know that they are involved with the review of zoning change applications. Anything interesting there you'd like to elaborate on?
That's a tough one. Because zoning gets so political, and it's even worse than environmental rules and everything else. But basically, there are too many people here. And so the development pressure in this entire watershed is going to be constantly focused on trying to put more people in. We're going to put in a townhouse here and a development there. And it's only 30 houses here and 30 there. And ultimately, what's going to happen? They're going to pave the entire county. I mean, that would be the goal of development. And you got to balance that well. We got to grow and blah, blah, blah. So you have to come up with some kind of smart strategy and try to force any new development to strictly adhere to the rules that are in place to protect what we have. And so we have the critical areas legislation. You have to follow that, and there's a buffer zone regulation. So the closer you get to the water, the more intense you're supposed to leave vegetation in place. I don't have a simple answer for the zoning situation for you. I wish I had a magic bullet, but I don't. You basically have to attack each project, and if you can't stop it, then you have to force them to follow the rules as best you can. And the rules are not always enforced by the county. They're certainly not enforced locally as tight as they might be. And then the rules that they have to enforce, you have to ask yourself, are they really strict enough? Like I'm aware in the city of Annapolis, there's a rule that says, you're supposed to have 50% tree canopy in the city. Well, there's developing so much, they're below their goal. So what would that mean? Well, it means we're below our goal, you can't develop anymore. Well, how realistic is that? So.
Well, how about shore improvement and wetlands creation? I know the Severn River Association's been involved with that and pretty active with it.
We're aware of living shoreline projects. One of our sister communities spent a bunch of money over the $350,000 or something like that. The Pines on the Severn. They put in a living shoreline. We were not involved in that one. That was another organization. Living shorelines is a big problem because on the Severn River, what you have is powerboat wakes that will basically overwhelm most of these living shorelines. We had a speaker at one of our meetings recently who we asked him the specific question: how do we protect our shorelines from powerboat wakes? And his quick response was, you got to armor it. That's all you can do. We were devastated. I mean, it's not what we want to see on the Severn River. We don't want to see more riprap and bulkheads. We want to see more open space, but it's a hard battle. Again, I don't have a simple answer for you on that one.
Let's talk about some of the activities that the SRA sponsors. You do outings.
Yes, we do. We've had some
Talk
hikes.
about them.
We've had some hikes in the past. I can tell you, upcoming, we're planning. I've gone on personal hikes through the Jabez area and that kind of thing. And there were hikes. Historically, we organize Saturday morning hikes just throughout the area.
Right.
We don't have those ongoing right now. But looking ahead, we're planning kayak hikes
Okay.
and paddleboard events
All right.
and perhaps some other social events. You'll have to check our Facebook page and website for that over the year. As,
right.
Believe me, when we get them organized, we'll be announcing them.
Okay.
Could I put a plug in for one thing that you may not have asked me yet?
One thing I was going to talk a little bit about is the cleanup and restoration projects. Is that what you had in mind? But go right ahead. What did you?
Well, for cleanup and restoration, our main focus right now is with stormwater cleanup and restoration. And I mentioned that earlier about our stormwater grant program. We're trying to encourage communities to go through their communities and identify where they have stormwater runoff problems. And my own community found a few of them. And the problem is when a community finds, oh, wow, they have a problem, and how do we solve it? Well, they do cost money. They can cost $35,000, $40,000, and these are for little ones. These are cheap ones. Well, how do you get started? You need to hire experts in the field of designing these things. And for you to go out, for a community to go out and get the bigger grant to pay for this, you first have to come to that grantor and present them with a professional design. So to get over that hump, the Severn River Association offers these stormwater remediation grants. $1,000 to help you pay for it. In some cases, you can reapply for another $1,500. That's our main focus on cleanup and restoration at this time.
Okay. And then how about educational series? Think you offer some educational programs?
That's what I was hoping you'd ask.
See, I thought I would get to it.
Yes, we have a monthly meeting. It's called the Educational Series. Right now it's organized by John Wright, and it's a brilliant series. We have all kinds of experts who come in and talk about various environmental challenges, things that are happening on the river. For one, we had Don Bosch a couple of years ago. He's with the University of Maryland. He came in to talk to us about the whole challenge to not just the Severn River, but the Chesapeake Bay in general, about global warming.
Right.
And we had another expert come in and talk about the rising tide problem. They're related. We've also had John Peacock, who's in charge of zoning enforcement for the county, to come in and explain his process and what they do. We have all kinds of different meetings. It's the third Tuesday of every month.
Right.
Starts at 7 o'clock. We have them at various places scattered throughout the entire watershed. So we're trying to hit people on the top end, the bottom head, in the middle. Sometimes we'll be meeting in a pub, so you can order dinner. Other times we're at a public, a church hall or maybe a DNR hall or different places. But the whole idea is to meet people who have thought about problems that address our situation. We just had Dan Neese. He's an economics guy from the University of Maryland. He came in to talk about, well, how do you fund public projects? And these are weighty questions, because how do you fund all this stuff? These are problems. How do you keep it going? And then how do you sustain it? And will this work? Will that work? Will this work? These are problems that have to be kind of absorbed and digested before you can really come up with a solution.
Tom, I'm certain that our viewers are going to want to learn more about the Severn River Association. What information can you provide them in terms of a website or a telephone number, or, as you made reference to, Facebook? How can they learn more about the Severn River Association? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, we have a website, and we have
and what's the website?
www, does anybody use that anymore?
Yes.
SevernRiver.org.
Okay.
The easiest thing to do is just type in Google Severn River Association. Our website will come up, and our Facebook page will come up.
Okay.
And I implore you all, go to the Facebook page, because I run it, and hit the like button. And then that way, you'll start getting feeds from us. Or you can go to our website. We're redesigning our website now so that you can see in detail all the programs that we have. And, we're always looking for volunteers to come out and join us. We need people who have an interest in this. So the website would be somewhere where you would want to go. Hey, I'm really into, planting a subaquatic vegetation in the river. Oh, really? Come on in. Or, they want to join the oyster program. Great. Go to the website, and there's a button you can follow to, find out how to grow oysters, how to do this. Another new project that we're creating is floating gardens. We're taking the lead on the floating gardens from our pals over at the Magathie River Association. They've been doing that. We're like, hey, that's a grand idea. So, if you want to, and the idea of a floating garden, if you're not used to it, it's basically a little platform floats on top, and the plants are selected, and they grow their roots right into the water. So you have these dangling roots. Well, the roots provide a cleansing function to the water, but they also provide habitat for little crabs, so that the little crabs can hide in there and not, have a better chance of surviving. They also flower, so they're kind of pretty to look at. But those are the kinds of things. If you want to help out one of our spring cleaning projects, then the website, come on in. Maureen Burt's running it this year. She might want to have a few hardy lads to come in, or somebody who can come in and say, hey, wait a minute, why don't we redesign that little parcel of land with a tree there or something like that? We could use all kinds of expertise. And also, if you're a community on the Severn River area, if you have a rainwater problem, stormwater problem, you can come to the website and go onto our the Stormwater Grants program, and we can explain to you on there how to apply, what kind of projects are available. We also need people who might just want to patrol the river. Just last, Severn River, we started in, 1911, and we've never had our own boat. Well, in 2015, we finally launched our own boat. We have a 13-foot whaler. So we're now able to go out and patrol the river and look around and do things. So one of the first things we did is we used it to deliver oysters up and down the river to our different oyster growers. But we need more people who want to go keep an eye on the river. For example, and this is the fun stuff. In the spring, it usually happens, somebody decides they want a better view of the river. And they go out of their way to clear cut all the vegetation right down to the waterway. And they do it without a permit. That is illegal. The critical areas regulations require that you obtain a permit and that you weed vegetation and clear it out according to certain guidelines. You're not supposed to just clear cut it out of the way. Some people keep clear cutting it out of the way, and that's bad, because what happens when you clear cut in a rainstorm? All that pollution that's trying to settle on your grass goes right into the river. So you're contributing to the pollution of the Severn River when you do that. Even though you get this great view, you're looking at a river that's dying. We have a guy in our one of our board of directors, Rusty, and he has a great expression. He's like, the river is suffering a death of 1,000 cuts. And it's true. And so how do you solve 1,000 cuts? Well, you got to come up with 1,000 answers, and we need people who can come along and go, wait a minute, you're not supposed to clear cut. If we can at least stop those clear cuttings. In the last year, we had 4 of them. And, these are boneheaded decisions. Some people are ignorant. They don't know better. Other people are just obstinate. And I'm sorry, but, that's what they are. And they come along and they just clear everything because look at me, look at me. Well, we don't really think that's a grand idea. So we have created a wall of shame to focus the look at me thing in sort of a negative light and try to offer to the rest of the community, look, there's a good way and a bad way to be doing this stuff, and this is bad for a lot of reasons.
Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like to have more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, please jot down the information on your screen. You can reach us at 410-263-7998 or by email at hrcommission@annapolis.gov. And check out our page at the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on City Government, and then Boards and Commissions, and you can scroll down to the Human Relations Commission page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."